Theresa Caputo, a medium on Long Island, is presently experiencing a serious financial issue. With a bank loan, she and her ex-husband Larry Caputo launched a firm. However, the company has lost money, and Theresa is now responsible for paying off the whole loan. Larry Caputo, her ex-husband, has stated that he would not be held accountable for this debt. Theresa is in difficulty by herself as a result. Despite giving her some time, the bank officials have made it plain that her house will be put up for auction if she is unable to repay the debt within the allotted period. Repaying the debt on time is currently Theresa's biggest challenge because failure to do so will result in her losing her house. The world of the living and the whispers of the dead were the two worlds that Theresa Caputo, also known as the Long Island medium, had always existed between. Her gift, her exuberant attitude, and her capacity to mend hearts won her admiration. Recently, however, she had a sorrow in her own heart that she had never experienced before. It all began when, despite their divorce, she and her ex-husband, Larry Caputo, made the decision to create a new company together. Theresa thought that even though they were no longer together, they still had a trusting relationship. With his typical assurance, Larry had presented the idea, "Theresa, this is going to be our second chance. For our future, not for us." To finance their ambition, they obtained a large bank loan. At first, the firm appeared promising, but as the months stretched into years, the losses mounted. The market wasn't favorable, sales were poor, and debt levels were high. Larry eventually pulled away. Larry had already cleaned his hands of the entire situation by the time the company failed. Theresa learned the hard reality when the bank knocked. Even though the company was registered in both of their names, Larry had been able to legally distance himself from the financial obligations. The entire burden of the loan was now directly on her shoulders. The once comfortable walls of her Long Island home felt like a cage, and she spent days walking around it in silence. The bank had been stern. They gave her a brief extension but warned her that they would have to put her house, where she raised her kids and where she had found solace even after her divorce, up for auction if she couldn't pay back the loan on time. Theresa fell down in private but attempted to maintain her composure in front of her kids, Victoria and Larry Jr. How did I allow this to occur? One evening, while gazing at the pictures of her family on the mantel, she muttered to herself. Theresa, however, wasn't one to give up quickly. Resilience and transforming sorrow into hope for others have been the cornerstones of her profession. Saving her own life now required her to use that same strength. She started by contacting former acquaintances, including book publishers, television producers, and event planners. She was aware that she had to put in more effort than ever before. She planned consecutive readings and made the journey across the nation to give live performances. Still, cinemas were packed with people who were excited to hear her voice and her messages from the other side. With each ticket sold, she was able to keep her house. However, the path wasn't simple. Her financial difficulties were soon reported to the press. Headlines like "Long Island Medium Faces Foreclosure" were splashed by tabloids. Some made fun of her, claiming that her spirits were no longer able to save her. In Theresa Caputo's money woes deepen. More people than ever before attended her performances and sent encouraging words in sympathy. Larry Caputo, meanwhile, said nothing. Seemingly unfazed, he had gone on with his own life and endeavors. However, Theresa secretly resented the treachery. She was left to face this tempest alone by the guy who had once vowed to love and protect her. The bank's deadline drew nearer as the weeks went by. Theresa put up a lot of effort, often doing 2 or 3 readings in a single day. She persisted despite the pain in her body and the hoarseness in her voice. Then something changed. She met a woman whose husband had died suddenly at one of her Boston gigs. Due to her inability to pay the expenses following her husband's passing, the widow was also in danger of losing her home. She said to Theresa, "You gave me hope tonight," while crying. "You demonstrated to me that my husband is still guiding me. I know I can keep fighting because of you." Theresa was hit like lightning by those words. She understood that this was about more than simply money or a home. It was about who she was, how strong she was, and how she continued to move forward even when life knocked her down. She made her readings available to people worldwide by starting a unique series of online events with newfound vigor. The reaction was tremendous. Thousands of fans signed up to help Theresa in her battle. In addition to the readings, the debt started to decrease gradually. The bank's deadline day finally arrived. With documents in hand and her heart racing, Theresa entered the branch. With every cent in hand, she gave the last payment. She received a firm nod of permission from the bank manager. "Mrs. Caputo, you made it. Your house is secure." The burden on Theresa's shoulders eventually subsided as she drove home that night. She had experienced fatigue, mockery, and betrayal, but she had emerged stronger. She sat on her porch that evening and gazed up at the Long Island sky. "Thank you for guiding me," she said softly, as if addressing the spirits she frequently accessed. "I nearly lost everything, but I eventually found myself once more." More significantly, her spirit remained intact, even though her house was secure. The Long Island medium, Theresa Caputo, had once again demonstrated that there is always light waiting on the other side of a dark situation. But Theresa was adjusting her notes while the faint hum of the studio lights flickered overhead. Long Island was quiet that night, yet the air was heavier than usual. Theresa sensed it as soon as she entered the room, a restless, even desperate presence that lingered just outside the boundaries of this reality. She brushed a flyaway hair out of her face and said to herself, "Something's here tonight." She couldn't help but notice the tension in the air, which made it feel colder. She reached out with her gift while sitting with her eyes closed for a moment. At first, the spirit arrived slowly and hesitantly, as though it wasn't sure if it could get over the barrier between life and death. Then it was clear, a young man, scarcely in his 20s, who was so overcome with grief that Theresa's chest constricted. Theresa said in a barely audible whisper, "He's lost, he's angry, but he's more sad than anything. He's looking for someone who can relate to him and help him find peace." The family in front of her had pale features and clasped hands tightly. They couldn't see her vision, but Theresa could see them. She sensed the acerbic pain of their loss, the shame they bore, the things they never said out loud. He feels guilty," Theresa added in a soft, almost respectful voice. "He tells me that he made a decision that he believed to be the only option, but he regrets leaving and regrets not staying." The mother's eyes filled with tears before her. She clutched a folded picture of her son, her hands shaking. She said, "I don't know why he left us. We didn't anticipate it." Theresa took a long breath and nodded, allowing the connection to deepen. "He wants you to understand that you weren't at fault. You have nothing to do with any of this." It was louder than any speech anyone could hear, and he simply felt imprisoned in his own thoughts. The father gulped forcefully, his jaw strained. "We believed we were listening, perhaps if we had said the correct thing." Leaning forward, Theresa spoke in a gentle, sympathetic tone. "At this moment he is saying, I needed to hear that I mattered. He's reaching out. He's reaching across the darkness to tell you he loves you, even if he couldn't stay. I needed to know I was loved, even when I couldn't see it." The room was quiet for a while, but for the occasional sniffle and the soft shuffle of papers, Theresa went on, her voice now full of eager affection. "He wants you to remember him for the love and joy he experienced, even in times when no one else saw him, rather than for the way he left. Since he has already forgiven you, he is requesting that you forgive yourself." The father's shoulders trembled, and the mother began to cry uncontrollably. Taking their hands in hers, Theresa softly guided the energy around them. "Tonight, he is leaving me a gift. He wants me to let you know that the suffering, the quiet, the melancholy, all of these things no longer define him. He is at peace, he is free, and he will always send you all of his love." Theresa felt the spirit's warmth envelop her like a blanket as she closed her eyes. "He is now revealing a light to me that is as bright as the sun emerging from a storm. Even though he had to travel through darkness to get there, he wants you to remember him as light." Despite the windows being closed, a gentle breeze seemed to blow through the room. The family let out a single breath, The brittle optimism Theresa had given them taking the place of their shared sorrow, which had only marginally lessened. "You're not by yourself," she said. "He remains with you. He is not forgotten. He also wants you to continue living, loving, and cherishing the wonderful times, the smiles, the laughter, the small things that made life worthwhile." The father's eyes were bright with tears as he glanced up. "Thank you," he responded in a shaky voice. "We appreciate you allowing him to speak and allowing us to hear him." Theresa gave a soft smile. "He never stops talking. Sometimes all you need is someone who will listen." Theresa sat for a while longer, allowing the room to settle as the family departed, carrying their son's legacy with them. The ghost hovered for a moment, a tiny, appreciative presence, and then departed, at last unburdened by the burden that had bound him to suffering. "Go in peace," Theresa said in a whisper, almost to herself, to the empty room. "Enjoy your freedom. You are cherished." Outside, gentle rays of the light were streaming over the horizon as it started to rise over Long Island. For the living as well as the spirit who had found peace, and the family who now carried his love in their hearts, it was a new day. Theresa understood why she was given this gift in times like these, to serve as a bridge between worlds and deliver messages of love, healing, and hope to those who most needed them. And she had once again seen tonight the strength of connecting, the strength of listening, and the eternal resiliency of the human spirit. But the gentle murmur of expectancy filled the audience, which was silent and almost reverent. The audience at Theresa Caputo's reading event in New York was giddy with anticipation on this particular occasion. In the hopes of experiencing the Long Island medium's magic firsthand, fans had traveled from all around. A familiar face sat among them, tucked away almost shyly in the back. Jim O'Hare, the adored Parks and Recreation actor. He was well known for his wry sense of humor and timing, and he wasn't exactly the kind to express his feelings in public. However, he was here tonight for a very personal cause rather than for the cameras or the limelight. With her customary warmth, Theresa walked into the room, instantly calming everyone. Her eyes glowed with that clear awareness, and she grinned at the crowd. "Good evening to all of you. A connection from a deceased person is really strong tonight, and I believe it is here for someone in this room." She looked around the gathering and murmured softly, "Don't worry, it will make sense soon." Jim felt a knot in his stomach. He had come in search of information, possibly even closure, about a relative he had lost many years prior. Even with close friends, he hardly ever talked about it. He had lost his cherished uncle, a man who had been a father figure, a mentor, and the only person who had had faith in him when everyone else had lost faith. Jim had buried the anguish under his work and humor, but it was still there, hidden away in the background. Theresa approached the middle of the room and fixed Jim with her gaze. She started by saying, "I feel a very strong male energy, very protective, very loving. Tonight, this man wants to speak with someone here. He never stops showing me pictures of him laughing, talking late into the night, and wearing a small, sly smile. He wants me to let you know that he is proud of you. He's proud of your life, your generosity, and your sense of humor. Yes, he does miss you, but he is content. He wants you to know that he is at your side no matter what." There was silence in the room. Jim's eyes filled with tears for the first time in years, and he felt a knot in his throat. He had never anticipated feeling so moved in a public place. He made an effort to restrain himself, but the feelings came flooding out, unadulterated and unrefined. Theresa went on, her tone stern but compassionate. She remarked, "I hear a nickname, something only you would call him." Jim gave a little nod, his hands shaking. "Yes, exactly. I envision him grinning at you while he shows me a picture of the two of you laughing, so hard you almost passed out at a baseball game while holding hot dogs. He wants you to remember the happiness rather than just the loss, and to laugh like that once more." Jim's eyes glistened with tears, but he made a bittersweet sound as he laughed quietly. The humorous, happy times that gave life meaning had all but vanished from his memory. Jim said in a scarcely audible whisper, "That's exactly him." With her hands extended as though to span the realms, Theresa grinned knowingly. She remarked, "He is displaying a gift to me." It's something much larger than a tangible item that you can hold. You're getting peace from him. He wants you to pardon yourself for the things you felt you didn't accomplish sufficiently and for the shame you've held. He wants you to know how much, and without conditions, he loved you. Even though Jim was crying uncontrollably now, there was a feeling of relief in his voice. It was therapeutic and cathartic. Sensing the closeness of the moment, the audience kept a respectful silence. Despite being stripped naked in front of others, Jim, who was well known for his humorous timing and easygoing demeanor, felt oddly secure. Theresa kept sending texts, sharing recollections and small details about Jim's uncle that only Jim could have known. He saw a flawless reflection of the guy he had lost in every aspect and memory. Jim recalled the warmth, the lessons, and the unwavering love he had received, and his smile returned, mixed with his tears. Theresa stopped once, tears in her eyes. She whispered, "This is love, pure love. It is not limited by space or time. It's more about how we feel than what we can see. And the love in this room is really, really powerful tonight." Jim was overcome with a deep sensation of thankfulness. Instead of finding the answers he had sought, he found healing. He had kept the anguish to himself for years, never letting himself truly grieve. He felt free now, free to remember, free to laugh, free to cry in a room full of strangers. After the reading, Jim walked over to Theresa and shook her hand, his hands trembling a little. I'm at a loss for words," he said, his voice breaking. "I've never had that kind of experience. I sincerely appreciate it." Theresa's eyes sparkled as she grinned. She said, "You don't have to say anything." He was an independent voice. You only had to pay attention. Jim felt lighter as he exited the arena that night, as if a burden he had been unaware he was carrying had been removed. He had a profound, lasting calm for the first time in years. Understanding, laughter, and love, a love that surpassed death itself, had taken the place of the connection he had thought was lost. Finally prepared to embrace life with the joy, laughter, and love his uncle had always felt he deserved, Jim O'Hare, the comedian and actor, walked out into the crisp New York night with tears in his eyes and a full heart. But Theresa Caputo was getting ready for another reading as the tiny, dimly lighted room hummed with silent expectation. The aroma of lavender permeated the air as a gentle hum of classical music floated from the speakers. Theresa's eyes, always alert but a little far away, looked around the room as she smiled her soft, comforting smile at everyone. A mother named Claire was clutching the hand of her bashful small son, Ethan, amid the familiar faces looking for direction today. For months, Claire's heart had been troubled by worry. Normally quiet and reserved, Ethan had started to ask odd questions about spirits, the afterlife, and individuals he claimed to have seen in dreams but could never have known. Claire was desperate but doubtful. After reading about Theresa's remarkable capacity to communicate with the other side, she concluded that she would be the best person to explain Ethan's strange conduct. Theresa motioned them to have a seat, her eyes softening as she extended her hand to Ethan. Her voice was soft as she said, "Hello, my love. I sense a certain vibe about you today, as if you have a unique bond. Would you mind answering a few questions for me?" Ethan gripped his mother's hand and nodded shyly. For a time, Theresa closed her eyes and allowed the energy of the room to guide her. She delicately touched the table with her fingertips before speaking rather abruptly. "I picture someone with you, someone tiny and intelligent. He has a tiny mark on his arm that resembles a tiny star or a tiny cloud. Is that something you've heard before?" Ethan's eyes grew wide, and when he pulled a sleeve, he saw a faint birthmark on his left forearm that resembled a tiny cloud nearly identically. Claire's fingers shot to her mouth as she let out a faint gasp. "How did you find out that?" Her voice trembled as she whispered. Theresa grinned, but there was a serious assurance in her gaze. "They occasionally provide me with small clues or details that help me relate to the person on the other end. It's about feeling their energy and their tale, not speculating." Ethan's shyness vanished as his little face brightened with curiosity. "Is it a boy? I mean, who are you referring to?" Theresa's gaze grew softer. "A boy, indeed. Is his name Ethan? It seems like something powerful and timeless. Claire's hand trembled as she held onto her son's shoulder, and Ethan's mouth opened a little. With tears in her eyes, she said, "Oh my God, that's his name. How is this even possible?" Theresa spoke softly but firmly, leaning slightly closer. "He is a ghost attempting to connect and reach out. In an attempt to reassure us, they occasionally reveal me small things like a name, mark, or recollection. He is attempting to convey a crucial message to you." After being silent for a while, Ethan muttered, "He says he wants me to know he's happy. Additionally, he expresses his pride in me." Theresa moved across to grab Claire's hand as the tears fell down her cheeks. "That's correct. They exist even though we are unable to view them as we would like. They protect us, lead us, and sure, occasionally they leave small hints or indicators to let us know they are close." Using her connection to the spirit, Theresa continued the reading for the following few minutes. She talked about little things that only Ethan would know, like his favorite stuffed animal from his early years, the lullabies his grandmother used to sing, and the subdued way he picked up on the world's littlest aspects. Ethan sat up straighter with each new discovery, his eyes gleaming with surprise, and Claire's hands shaking as she clung to wonder and hope. Theresa finally stopped, allowing the room to absorb the gravity of the situation. She whispered, "Ethan, never forget this. There is a light within you. This small symbol and connection serve as a constant reminder that you are never truly alone. Every day you are surrounded by someone who loves and supports you. And it's strong. That is unique. You're that." A tiny smile appeared on Ethan's face as he glanced down at his arm and then back at Theresa. He said, "I think I understand." Claire gave her kid a tight hug, her emotions now mixed with a calmness she hadn't experienced in months. She whispered, "Thank you," her voice breaking. "We appreciate you giving us this gift." Theresa looked around the room and nodded, grinning. Every child has a narrative to tell, and occasionally those stories contain messages from the people who care about them the most. You have a unique, lovely, and significant connection. Always cherish it. Theresa watched Claire and Ethan walk away hand in hand, her thoughts immediately turning to the next reading. The image of Ethan's tiny cloud-shaped birthmark and the happiness and calm she witnessed returning to his mother's eyes, however, remained with her even as she welcomed the energy of the next person, a silent reminder of why she did this work and why every little detail mattered. A child named Ethan conveyed a message of love into that dimly lit room, which was filled with lavender and the faint murmur of music. This was evidence that even invisible energies may leave the most subtle, indisputable marks of their existence. Hi everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Mina, and I hope you're having a great day. Remember to subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video.